Am I a Pharisee? Part 7. Hi, welcome to today's little lesson. We've been looking in Matthew chapter 23 at Jesus' criticisms, his denunciations of the Pharisees, and finding ourselves in so many ways. And it has been an exercise in self-examination. And today we're going to be about halfway through this entire chapter that is devoted to this very topic, Jesus' criticism of the Pharisees. And we're looking at Matthew chapter 23 and verse number 15. Let me read it to you and see if we can find application to our lives in some way. Woe to you, Jesus says, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. And he repeatedly uses that phrase, hypocrites, which in the Greek is a word, it just means actor. You're a play actor. You're pretending to be what you really aren't, putting on a show for people. Yet God knows what's really going on in your heart and your life. And that certainly is true with us. And anytime we're putting on a show for people that tries to leave the appearance that we're more spiritual than we actually are, that's Pharisaic. It makes us like the Pharisees. There's a lot of that. And I'm sure I'm guilty. I know I'm guilty. Hypocrites, because you travel around on sea and land to make one proselyte, one convert, and when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourselves. Now, let's see if we can unpack that all, because, again, when you take the letter of the law, you can easily not find yourself guilty. Well, I don't travel on land and sea so much. I don't travel on the sea at all, for that matter. I fly wherever I go in my ministry. And we're often trying to impress people, and I think that is intimated here by the extent to which we'll go, inconveniencing ourselves for the sake of the gospel. Boy, I'll get on a jet and I'll fly, for 14 hours or 32 hours. And believe me, I know what that's like. And, but not just that, not just your travel inconvenience, but just the efforts that people make. Oh, you must be so dedicated because look at how much you're doing to reach people for the gospel. I mean, you've built this huge building and you've gotten yourself mortgaged in debt for decades here, and you work 60 hours or 70 hours a week to your pastor, and your family has been neglected because of that, and oh, you'll drop everything to go, whatever. And we're happy for people to know how dedicated we are, what a great extent we'll go to show how devoted we are. But Jesus says, but look at the fruit of what you're doing. Look at the quality of the disciples that you're making in light of all of your sacrifice and devotion. So in this case, it's quite plain. You make him twice the son of hell as yourself. Oh my goodness, that's pretty pointed and plain. And we may or may not be guilty of that to such a degree, but yet there's an application here to modern ministers and anyone who's claiming to be a servant of God. Look at the quality of your end result. Jesus said, make disciples. Well, you put together all these great sermons and built this big program, multiple programs, layers of programs, given the best years of your life and so forth, and all these things that, ministers and pastors often do. But what have they got to show for it? They've got a crowd. A Sunday morning crowd. That's all they got to show for it. Or, I'm maybe exaggerating too far onto the side. There could be a little more fruit beyond that. Maybe a few people slip into heaven too. But in reality, for so many in ministry, if they're honest, That's all they can show. What do you got? How's the quality of your people? Are they gaining ground in loving God with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength, as proven by their obedience to his commandments, namely his most important commandments? Are they growing in love and sacrifice and devotion? Do they love their neighbor as themselves? Do they share the gospel with anybody? Have they ever made any disciples themselves? See, so I had to face up to this, so I'm not just being critical of other ministers. I faced up to it, and I admitted it. Not much to show for all your work and all your devotion. And a lot of people think you're devoted, but look at the quality of the output. Look at the fruit of what you're doing. And for those of us in ministry, it ought to be, you're looking at people, the disciples, the ones who are, under, in some way or another, your ministry, being impacted by it. If the only thing that's happened is that they're saying, well, we've got a great preacher in our church. He gives great sermons. You haven't got nothing. As Stevie Wonder said in one of his songs, you haven't done nothing. So the goal, the mandate, is to make disciples, teaching them to obey all that Christ commanded. So you've got a big church, great. Are they obeying Christ and keeping all his commandments? Well, you know the answer to that, don't you? If you invite a missionary, someone who is displaying their devotion to Christ in an extraordinary way, they've left their home and left their families to go to a foreign country to reach people who have never had a chance to hear the gospel. If you invite that missionary to speak at your church, will there be more or less people that will show up for that service? You know the answer to that. And maybe more will in your church. I doubt it. But because in most cases it's much less, because people aren't interested, because they're not saved. They're not disciples of Christ. They're not really excited about the expansion of the kingdom of God. They don't want to be around where there might be an offering received to help promote the gospel and help another missionary. They don't want that. And so, if that's the fruit of our ministry, then that's Pharisaic. You're putting in a lot of effort to show people how devoted you are, and very little real fruit. Real fruit. Disciples to show. Okay, thank you so much for joining me on today's little lesson. Hope to see you next time.